Hi everybody, Leo Babauta from Zen Habits here, and in this video we're going to talk about how to deal with the kind of craziness of the world. So let's say you are in a time where there's a lot going on in the world. You know, the news is overwhelming, it frustrates you, maybe it makes you feel angry or depressed and hopeless and powerless. Definitely overwhelmed. And so you can tell if you open up like your favorite news sites or apps and you're just like, I can't deal with that. Or another symptom is that you are scrolling and endlessly. And it's just like, this is like driving me crazy. And so that's, the news is one example of that, but it just might be that there's crises going on around the world from you know, big plane crashes to, tsunamis or hurricanes or global, warming crisis or, financial crisis, a political crisis, racism, all kinds of stuff that might be happening, violence against the oppressed, against women. There can be a lot going on. And it's hard to deal with. And so I'm going to talk about not how to solve all of those problems, because obviously I'm not going to be able to do that, but how do we navigate through the world with all of that going on, and kind of navigate with a sense of sanity? How do we find our inner peace, our inner zen in the midst of that? So there's a couple of responses that people tend to want to have. One of them is to shut it all down. I'm going to bury my head in the sand. I'm not going to pay any attention to the outside world. And this is an approach that I've had, and I've known a number of people who've had this approach, which is basically, I don't look at the news. I'm above all of that. It's just like it's worthless to look at the news. And I actually think there's some wisdom to that. Just kind of shut it all out and not let it rile you up. There's not much you can do about it, and so you can just feel powerless and overwhelmed and frustrated, and it can be really draining on your mental health. And so just, quitting the news would be one approach. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad approach. I actually think it can be helpful if you're kind of obsessed with the news, but it doesn't necessarily address the problems. It just shuts our eyes to it. And so there are people who want to really address the problems, for whom like hearing about people quitting the news is actually really frustrating for them, because they're like, hey, you can't just bury your head in the sand and think all the problems are going to go away. They're still there. People are still suffering. You just have the privilege of not having to worry about it. But then you're neglecting your duties to like be a good citizen of the world and actually participate, to actually be informed, to actually like care about others suffering, and then actually like join in on the efforts to make things better. So I actually think there's a really good point to that. I'm guilty of burying my head in the sand and just ignoring all of it, and it leads to some sanity for me. But on the other side, the other way that people will handle it is like, okay, I need to stay on top of this and be informed. I remember when the war on Gaza started, and there was all this, news coming out about how many children were dying, for example. There were some people that I knew who basically couldn't stop scrolling, looking at all of these things and just getting really angry and feeling powerless. And they knew that this was not good for them, and yet they couldn't stop. Couldn't stop scrolling, doom scrolling, and happens on X/Twitter, Instagram, you name it. All of the social media, all the news apps, just like constantly looking, checking to see what's new. And that isn't good for our mental health either. Now, to granted, that can keep us engaged with the news, but not in a way that's healthy. So how do we find the balance? How do we actually move through the world, stay engaged, and not feel like it's driving us insane, right? Um, and so I think one of the things is like, how do we react? So just notice when you open up a news app or social media and look at these kinds of things, what's going on in the world, what shows up for you internally? What emotions show up? What thoughts show up? And what you might notice is that some of these thoughts are unhelpful. It's like, it's like freaking so and so is always doing this stuff. Why are they like this? Like it just drives you really like crazy, right? Um, and so we can notice like we have some internal response, like a emotion. We don't even usually notice the emotion. We just have thoughts that are about the situation, the external situation, without noticing what's coming up internally. And the thoughts drive more stuff up internally. So it's like, oh, I feel something, like a yank on my heart, or some kind of fear, or some kind of overwhelm. And then from that, I, just jump in um, with my thoughts and be like, they shouldn't be acting this way. They shouldn't, uh, why are they like that? Which is another version of they shouldn't, right? Which is not something that's under our control, but where it drives our emotion of anger or frustration. And that in turn might have more thoughts come up and then more emotions, and then we just get stuck in this cycle of thoughts and emotions along with kind of obsessive actions of doom scrolling, right? Okay, so we want to notice all of that. And what I really want to encourage you to do then is to notice the internal emotional reaction. Again, like it's a tug on the heart. It's you know, a poke in the heart, maybe. It's a feeling of anxiety or fear or frustration or powerlessness. And when that comes up, we can tend to it. Learn to tend to your inner reaction. Not necessarily the thoughts. The thoughts are interesting. Journal about those thoughts if you want, or get them down on a voice note, or share them with your therapist. But the thoughts are, we get too caught up in those thoughts. They're a habitual reaction to what's going on in here. So if we can learn to get present to what's going on here, which is an emotion, a set of sensations in the torso, we can soothe those by having our attention just rest on it, the sense of presence, just like I'm just noticing how it is. Maybe even curiosity, like, how am I feeling internally? Deepening the breath down into the belly. Long, slow, deep breaths can help us to soothe ourselves. And then any kind of warmth, friendliness, love, compassion is something we can kind of pour on there, like this warm, syrupy love. It's like, I care about you. You're okay to feel these things. And so this would be it would be how we would comfort a little kid who we loved, who is having a hard time. We would give them a hug and we would just be there with them, maybe give them some soothing sounds or words. But we don't need to fix the problem for them. They're just feeling their feelings. The same is true of our own internal reaction. We're feeling our feelings. We usually don't even notice those. So if you can notice you're having feelings, huge. And then if you can learn to be with those feelings, which is having your attention rest on it, deepening your breath, and just like soothing it in whatever way you can. Some deep breath, maybe some warm tea, go for a walk, soothe yourself. And if you can do this kind of self-soothing of your internal reaction to that, then the next step, once you've done that, that's already huge. You're already like way beyond what most people are doing. But beyond that, you can have a frame of mind that is empowering. Usually our frame of mind is disempowering or kind of like helpless. I'm kind of victim mode. Again, this is not about victim shaming or blaming, but more just like, I feel like things are happening to me. The world is happening to me and I feel out of control, powerless, can't do anything about it. Well, a frame of mind that is more empowered is I'm going to focus on what's in my control. What can I do? So I can't control them. I can't control what everybody is saying, what everyone's doing. I can't control the weather or all of, global finances. But what can I control? Well, I can control like my own internal reaction, soothing it. I can control my own actions. Okay, what would I like to do that feels doable? Well, maybe there's like 1,000 things. Okay, let me just pick a couple of them, one or two actions that feel doable. Just stay informed on a certain topic. Maybe I write to my congressperson. Maybe I get involved in some kind of action group. Maybe I talk to people about it. Maybe I go out there and become a part of a community action, building something new together. Maybe I donate something. So you don't have to do all of these. That's a lot of things. Pick one and say, okay, this is something that I'm going to start with and start to take some action. Now, it doesn't have to be any of these. It could be something else that feels appropriate to you. But just pick something that feels actionable and doable and within your control. So something small that you can do. Like, I'm unhappy about this situation. Okay, what's something small that I can do? Maybe it's just starting to learn a little bit more about the situation. Maybe others have given some advice of what we need to be doing around this. Maybe there's people who are already taking action and I can just learn more about what they're doing and maybe get involved in some way. Maybe we can just have a conversation with people. Little things like this can really make a huge difference. But what you notice is it's like, what is in my control? Not how do I control the whole world and tell them they shouldn't behave this way. People are going to behave the way they behave. Now, I'm not saying that isn't something that's within our influence. We can influence how others behave and think, but we have to do that one step at a time with our own words and actions. I can speak up about this. I can start to educate people. I can start to connect with people so that it starts to change the dynamics of the community. So there are things that we can do, but we can't control the world. We can control what's within our own sphere of influence and then start to take action there. And that's a frame of mind that can be that can be very empowered. Powerlessness isn't bad or wrong. We all feel powerless sometimes. This is why we sometimes feel we get to despondency and hopelessness, feel depressed about the state of things. It's also why we get really angry and frustrated, is because we're feeling powerless. They shouldn't act like that. We don't have control over them. We don't have power over them to change their actions, but we get angry anyway because we feel that powerlessness. So underneath all of this is just a feeling of powerlessness. And what if we could just let ourselves feel powerless? Become present with it, soothe it with some deep breathing and some love, drink some hot tea, and then get ourselves to a place of, I'm going to pick one small action to take. That's what I would encourage. In addition, doing any kind of self-care is always a good thing. So I mentioned the internal practices, having a hot cup of tea, taking a hot shower, a bath, going for a walk, talking with a friend or a therapist or both, getting in connection and community, like not being alone in all of this is really good. I really do recommend not being alone in all of this. Having people to talk with. Definitely a therapist is always a good thing. Journal about it. And don't expect to solve all of these issues all in one day, even though that would be amazing. Okay, that's what I've got for you. This is not just about world events, but it's about what's happening in our personal lives, at work, just in general. Like, how do we navigate through the world with a sense of sanity? That's what I've got for you. I hope this has been helpful. I'm sending you all love in the midst of a chaotic world. And I hope that this has been helpful. If it has been, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And then please subscribe if you can. I appreciate it. I'm Leo Babauta saying goodbye. Have an amazing day. I'll talk to you all later.